Hello. So this is a recording where we are going to talk about setting up your directories and files for engaging with R in RStudio in PHI 512. And this is not exactly how you have to do it, but doing it in this way will facilitate reading in data, writing out plots, and creating plots that then you can include in other write-ups. So to start, the first thing that we are going to suggest you do for this course is create a folder somewhere on your computer. I've created it in my documents folder here, and I'm calling it PHI 512. When I open that, inside of that I will have some folders corresponding to the different data analyses I'm going to do or different labs I'm going to engage with. In this example lab folder, which is going to be an example for one lab we might look at, I have two things. I have a script that I'm going to engage with, as well as this nhanes.csv, the data set that I'm going to want to look at. So this is going to be important that we have this one folder that we are going to use for now that has everything we want in it, both the script and the data set. Okay, great. So why is this important? So let's imagine we would like to read in this data set. So we can open that example script in RStudio. Here it's actually already open, but I'm actually going to close it and then reopen it. In fact, I'm going to close RStudio and reopen RStudio. That's applications. And I will traverse until I find that script. So from here I would go File, Open File. And I would search, and I know that I put this in my Documents folder. So Documents, PHI 512, Example Lab, Example Script. So I would like to run this script. Now, there's a new thing we're going to talk about today, which is what's called the working directory. So we talked about sort of the workspace or the global environment, and this is where R stores all of the variables that you engage with. In addition, there's something very different called a working directory. And when you, for example, try to read in a data set off your hard drive with read.csv, this is where R initially looks for that CSV. And if you write anything, write a data set to your hard drive, create a plot and try to put it on your hard drive, this working directory is where R will try to put that object. So the thing we want to do is we want to set as our working directory exactly this folder, this example lab folder that we created for this lab. So what do? We have to discover where on our computer this example lab folder is. The simplest way to do that is to right-click, or if you're using a touchpad, press Control and then click on the folder. And now we either hold Option or Alt, and that will allow us to click Copy Example Lab as path name. Option or Alt sort of depends on whether you're on a Mac or a PC. So we copy this as a path name. We then go to this command we have at the top, setwd, which is commented out. We uncomment it, and instead of fix me, we paste in our path name. So on my computer, where is this folder example lab? Well, it's at this whole path. Right? And so you would have to do this for your computer to say, when you run this to R, this is where I want you to start working from. This is where I want you to start looking for my data sets. This is where I want you to output my plots. Great. So now from here, we have this line, setwd, again, as a function. In parentheses, you would then have in quotes whatever that path name is. And then when we run this line, it is going to change the working directory to whichever working directory we wanted to set it to. And now, as we note, if we look back in here, we can see that inside example lab, we have this nhanes.csv. So now if we tried to read in nhanes.csv, we run that, it will be able to do it because that is where it's looking. So again, this working directory is where R looks for things. It has some default, but generally you want to set it at the beginning of your script and then set it to again, where you would like to engage with data, where you would like to output things. We can then, for example, look at the names of this data set. Perfect. Similarly, we might want to create a plot and then save it. So we talked a little bit about using hist to create a plot. So we created, it's in the bottom right-hand corner of the screen. One way to save this is to click Export, and we can save it in different ways. I'm going to say Save as Image. This nice thing comes up, and we can change the file name. Maybe I'll call it My Histogram. And this directory, we could move it elsewhere, but this is going to be whatever our current working directory is. We can also modify other things if we would like, but I will just click Save. And now, if we go to that directory, we see there's a PNG file called My Histogram, and if we open it, we get to see that histogram. All right, so there's one other way to save plots that you can use alternatively, and that is to use basically a sequence of 3 commands. So the first command is this PNG command, and this PNG open paren and then the name of the file that you want to save. So we want to save a file that I want to call histogram.png. So that like primes us to create a plot. When we run this line, it will create a sort of a file, a PNG file with nothing in it. The next line that we run, hist NHANES $age, creates a histogram of ages in the NHANES dataset, but it won't create it in the bottom right. We still have one there. But if we didn't, it wouldn't create a new one there. In fact, I'm going to close this, and we will see. Instead, it will create it in this file, histogram.png. So I create that, and then dev.auth is a function that says, okay, now we're done. Now stop adding things to histogram.png. So I could then run that. And now, if we look, we have another file called histogram.png that we can open that, again, has this same thing. We created this entirely from text rather than pointing and clicking. And so you can do either one. I think the top on line 7 is probably easier. The bottom is a little bit cleaner, maybe. One last important thing to note. When you are modifying your working directory, if you are on a Windows machine rather than a Mac machine, when you paste this in, rather than these forward slashes, you may see backslashes. I am pretty sure that you're going to have to change all of those backslashes to forward slashes, otherwise R might give you a hard time. So if you are on a Windows machine and you try this and it gives you a problem, look and see if you have backslashes or forward slashes, and maybe try to flip and use the other type of slash. All right, I hope that's helpful. Great. Hopefully, after this, you can engage with your working directory, and you can read in data, and you can output data, and you know where it is.